It goes back, I think, to the airship mystery of 1897, where across the United States, across something like, 10 different states, people saw these gigantic airships that were nothing like Zeppelins. Now, remember 1897, what do you call them? Well, the airships, the Zeppelins, hadn't been invented yet, right? And we didn't have airplanes. And so these people are seeing constructions in the sky that look like aircraft from out of Jules Verne novels. Absurdly complex, strange
is there
craft.
pictures? Is there like, I don't know, there's probably not, is there photos?
Yeah, I mean, you can, there's renderings of them that appeared in newspapers.
How can we, what should he type in to find this?
1897 airship mystery.
Okay.
Yeah, airship mystery of 1897.
Okay.
There have been whole books written about it.
Okay.
Several good ones. And these were reported on in tens of newspapers across the country. Try to find some of the newspapers. See, that one's from the San Francisco Call. There were huge sightings in 1896, late 1896 into 1897 across more than 10 states, and they were reported in tens of newspapers, including like the San Francisco Chronicle. Major newspapers ran these stories on their front pages. Judges, sheriffs, lawyers, doctors, the most prominent members of the community, in some cases mayors of towns, actually witnessed these things from close up. They would land in people's farms and ask for resupply and then fly away. And they were piloted by people, not by aliens.
Okay.
And when asked what these things were, the airship pilots would make claims like, well, there's a corporation in New York that's going to be publicly introducing this invention sometime soon, and there's going to be like some great announcement, and that investors from New York were behind the inventors of this airship. So I pursued this whole line of research in my book, Closer Encounters, one of the two books that I sent for you. And in that book, I made this argument that there appear to have been certain Prussian industrialists, meaning industrialists from Germany of that time, late 19th century Germany, Prussian industrialists, who were involved on the one hand in airship engineering. Remember, the Germans invented the Zeppelin later on. And these industrialists wanted to exploit resources in the Americas. They were after resource exploitation in the Americas. And to make a long story short, I did some research that provisionally led me to conclusion in that book that J.P. Morgan and the Harriman railroad industry in the late 19th century got in with these Prussian industrialists, and they began to engineer and test fly these airships in the Americas. So that's what I wrote about in Closer Encounters, and I suggested that was the beginning of the trajectory of technological research that eventually led to anti-gravitic propulsion. I really wonder whether that's the case. I've since come to reconsider that hypothesis. And this is all by way of explaining who the Collins elite is. Okay? So the more you look at these reports from 1896, 1897, the more they don't make any sense. These people are seeing completely different things on different nights. The airships all look equally absurd. None of them looks like anything that could actually fly. And the reports are all of different types of things, different shaped craft. And sometimes some people will just see a light, like in San Francisco, say, one night. Some of the people who saw the thing saw a light. Others saw a structured craft. And it looked one way to one group of people and another way to another group of people. And the most disturbing element in this whole story is that the San Francisco Chronicle tracked down the patent lawyer who claimed to represent the inventor of the airships, the mystery inventor of the airships.
Right.
And this guy was a very prominent patent attorney. He was named George Collins. And they brought this guy in, they got testimony from him about this inventor and, the nature of the airship technology and when it was going to be rolled out to the public and all this, right? 3 days later, George Collins comes in And he did, after reading the story in the San Francisco Chronicle, he says, I never said those things. They're like, sir, you sat with us and gave us hours of testimony, which we wrote up. He claimed to have been in a trance the entire time that he recounted this to the San Francisco Chronicle. And then they went and tried to find the inventor that he claimed to represent. And the guy was I forget what his first name was, last name was Benjamin. And he was a dentist who specialized in inventing.
Benjamin?
Yeah, exactly. And he specialized in inventing dental bridges. But as his hobby, he dreamed of making airships. Okay. So there's something weird going on here. Now, people saw these things. People touched these things. Sheriffs and mayors interacted with the pilots of these craft. But there's good reason to believe that these were not structured objects in any sense that conventional physics understands.
Right.
And that people's perceptions were being manipulated on a grand scale, and that in at least one case, poor Mr. Collins, the patent attorney whose career was destroyed by this, somebody was taken over through a hypnotic trance, or telepathic mesmeric trance, as they called it in those days, and he was given a whole narrative to parrot to the San Francisco Chronicle. Now, here's what I think. Let me give you one more piece of data before I draw a conclusion here. It was either the San Francisco Call or the San Francisco Chronicle, one of these newspapers. They also quoted, so after Collins, this whole debacle with Collins, there's another guy who stepped forward and claimed to be a patent attorney representing the airship inventor. And this second guy, he also had a very significant pedigree. I think he had a background in the U.S. military at a high level. And he said the airships were being invented to go fight the Spaniards in Cuba, and that the reason they had been invented was because there were people in the United States who didn't want the Cuban Civil War to go a certain way, but they knew they couldn't get authorization from Congress to have a direct U.S. military intervention in Cuba. So instead, they were going to load this airship with all this TNT, and they were going to go over and drop it on Havana and level the city. He made this statement in the newspaper. So here's what I think happened. The feds, understandably concerned that there's maybe some rogue group of airship people out there who are going to go level Havana with TNT in the name of U.S. foreign policy, started investigating this whole thing. And they had all these tens of newspaper stories to go on, right? And at some point, I'm sure, they had a nice long interview with Mr. Collins, the patent attorney, who got subjected to some kind of telepathic hypnosis. And my guess is that the name Collins Elite comes from that it was all the way back in 1897, and in particular with the case of Mr. Collins at the nexus of the airship mystery, that they gave themselves this informal, unofficial name, the Collins Elite, of people in the federal government at a very high level who, from a Christian perspective, were extremely concerned about this phenomenon because it appeared to involve mass deception and manipulation and the apparent materialization of objects from out of nowhere, what we call apports, and what people referred to as conjury throughout the history of alchemy, right? So long story short, I think that maybe already in 1897, by the way, I wrote an article about this. It's called The Airships of Prometheus. And it's on the American Colossus website, americancolossus.org, which is an organization I'm involved with now. There's an article I put up there called The Airships of Prometheus that goes into this whole alternative hypothesis, rival to the hypothesis I entertained in my book, Closer Encounters, where basically I conclude that these gentlemen convinced themselves that Satan was behind this, that Satan was engaged in a mass manipulation and deception of the American populace using the apparition of these airships. And this is the beginning of the U.S. government's interest in the UFO phenomenon.
Oh my God.
And this is why Grush keeps saying when they ask him about 1933, so was 1933 the first? And he says, no, it goes way back even before that. Well, tell us. No, I can't talk about it. Well, because he knows, but he hasn't been cleared to talk about it.